Today we're going to be looking at arc length. As a reminder, an arc is 2 points on a circle and the unbroken part of the circle between those 2 points. So let's look at circumference, which relates to arc length. So circumference of a circle, and I'm hoping that this is a review for you. The circumference of a circle can be found using pi times the diameter, or 2 pi r, where d is the diameter of the circle and r is the radius of the circle. As a reminder, the diameter is equal to 2 radii. Right, so the diameter is twice the radius is half the length of the diameter. Circumference measures the linear distance around the circle. Circles can be measured in degrees and in linear units. And we have been working in degrees, so now we're going to be working in linear units. Arcs of a circle can be measured in 2 ways. They have length as a portion of the circumference, but they also have a measurable curvature based upon the corresponding central angle. Right, so here, if we're talking about the measure of an arc, and I believe this is in your notes already, if it is, and maybe a fill in the blank, so fill in the blank if it is. If it's already filled in for you, just put a star by it. Right, so here we're looking at the measure of the arc. The arc measures exactly the same as the central angle. Right, those have the same amount of curvature. Right, the amount of curvature at the center of the circle is the same as the amount of curvature on the outside of the circle. Arc length is not, arcs measured in degrees is not dependent on size, right? It's dependent on curvature. A small circle or a large circle with the same curvature that arc will have the exact same measure. So this is arcs measured in degrees, and I think this is already in your notes. But what if I were to just take some ink on the outside of the circle, this happens to be a tire, and just roll that tire. That tire would make a mark, just like you see. This would be arc length measured in linear units. So it's like we took the arc and we flattened it out and we measured how long it is. So arc length, and I think this is in your notes, arc length is a portion of the circumference of a circle. The circumference measures the entire outside of the circle. Arc length measures a piece of the outside of a circle. And that piece is an arc. So what is the circumference of a circle? We have the 2 formulas. Circumference equals pi times diameter, or circumference equals 2 pi r. I use whichever one I happen to know. If I know the diameter, I use the first formula. If I know the radius, I use the second formula. Here we know the radius, so I'm going to use the second formula. Circumference equals 2 times pi. The radius is 6 inches. And I can simplify that and make that 12 pi inches. When you're finding circumference or arc length, leave your answer in terms of pi unless asked to round. And don't forget the units, right? There should be units. You might be wondering, what is pi? Right, I want you to add this to your notes on the side there. So pi is the special relationship between the circumference and diameter of a circle. If you took the circumference of any circle and divided it by the diameter of any circle, you would get pi. And this is true all of the time. Right? And so if you were to take any circle, if I find the circumference of this circle and I find the radius of this circle, and I divide the circumference by the radius, what would be left is pi. All right, so let's find, here we know the circumference of the circle. We want to find the radius of the circle. Since we're looking for radius, let's use the formula circumference equals 2 pi r. Is there anything we could substitute for in that equation? If you notice, c is labeled with another value. All right, it's labeled as 26 pi. We could replace the c with 26 pi, since that's the circumference. And now we can solve for radius. All right, you can divide both sides, first of all, by 2. All right, if I divide by 2, I would have 13 pi equals pi times the radius. You could also divide both sides by pi. And 13 is the radius. Below it says what's the diameter. All right? If we have the radius and know the diameter would just be 2 times the radius or 2 times 13, which would be 26 inches. We also could have taken that circumference formula and used the other part. We could have used circumference equals pi times the diameter. We know the circumference is 26 pi. We're looking for the diameter. If we divide both sides by pi, 26 inches is the diameter. All right? So 2 different ways to find the diameter from the circumference of a circle, right? One where we already know the radius, and one where we don't know the radius, right? And we also solved for the radius by using the other formula for circumference. Now you may wonder, could we have divided by 2 pi all at the same time? Yes, right? You could cancel out the pi's and divide 26 and 2 by 2 all at the same time. All right, so now I don't think these ones are in your notes. We want to find the circumference of the circles. So this video will pause so that you can find the circumference of the circles. You won't get a picture because I can't post pictures to the video questions. But I think if I tell you that for the first one, the radius is 12 feet, and if I tell you for the second one that the diameter is 30 feet, I think you can find the circumference, even without a picture. All right, so the tape will pause, you answer the question, and then I'll go over it. All right, thanks for answering the question. So I'm going to use the circumference equals 2 pi r because we know the radius. So that means circumference is 2 times pi times 12, which means the circumference is 24 pi feet. Let's try the second one. In the second one, I know the diameter, so I should use circumference equals pi times diameter. And well, once you plug in for D, I want to change the ordering, you're done. So circumference equals 30 pi feet. Just replace diameter with the diameter of the circle, and you're done. Not too difficult, right, to find the circumference given the radius or diameter. These ones are in your notes. They're typed up nice in your notes. They're too small and pixelated if I try and blow them up, so I wrote them out. First of all, we want to find the circumference of a circle with a radius of 17 centimeters. The tape will pause so you can answer the question, and then I'll go over it in just a minute. All right, thank you. So I'm going to, since I know the radius is 17 centimeters, I'm going to use the formula circumference equals 2 pi r, rather than finding the diameter. So that means circumference is 2 times pi times 17. 2 times 17 means the circumference is 34 pi centimeters. And you don't forget to include the units. Find the circumference of a circle with a diameter of 14 inches. You find the answer first, and then I'll go over it. Okay, so let's go over this one now. I'm going to use this formula, circumference equals pi times diameter, because I know that the diameter is 14 inches. So that means the circumference is 14 pi inches. Just had to replace the diameter with 14. Find the radius of a circle with a circumference of 14 pi yards. I did change that problem just a tad from the one in your notes. Just add a pi to that question. All right, it's a lot easier to find the circumference. You'll have, the radius. You'll have a much prettier number. So go ahead and find the radius, and then I'll go over the answer. All right, so let's solve this one. All right, so since we're looking for the radius, let's use circumference equals 2 pi r. Since we know that the circumference is 14 pi, let's replace c with 14 pi. That gives us 14 pi equals 2 pi r. All right, now we want to divide both sides by 2 and by pi. So you don't have to do that in 2 steps. You can do that in 1 step. Sorry, my throat gets dry when I'm talking. So 14 divided by 2 is going to give us 7. The pi's will cancel, and that means 7, and this is in yards, 7 yards equals the radius. Let's try the next one. Let's find the diameter of a circle with a circumference of 12 pi feet. All right, the tape will pause so you can answer the question, and then I'll see you back. All right, let's go over this one. So let's use the formula circumference equals pi times diameter, because we're looking for the diameter. We're given that the circumference is 12 pi feet, so we should just replace 12 pi with circumference with 12 pi. So that gives us 12 pi equals pi times the diameter. All we have to do is divide both sides by pi, and that tells us that the diameter is 12 feet. And in addition to solving these out, make sure that you put these in your notes. And if you need me to pause, I can pause. If you're watching the video on your own, then you can pause so that you can get the notes in. All right? So I think this is pretty much the only section of notes you had of these 4 questions here. And both of those were changed slightly. I added a pi in questions 3 and 4. In the next video, we'll look at arc length. All right, so arc length relates to circumference. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.